In the cold emptiness of space, a small signal began its long journey. It was weak and trembling, traveling through light years of darkness, carrying only one desperate message, a cry for help. The signal came from a world called Virelia, a beautiful planet covered with silver blue oceans and crystal forests. The people of Virelia were gentle and intelligent. They believed in peace, in knowledge, and in harmony. For centuries, they had built cities of light that floated in the sky and shared art and science with their neighbors. They had forgotten what war even looked like. But the universe had not forgotten them. From deep in the black void came the Kashar Dominion, a race of conquerors who believed that only the strong deserved to live. Their ships were sharp like blades, and their armies moved like a storm. They came without warning. In only a few days, the skies of Virelia turned red with fire. Entire cities vanished. The Virelians tried to speak, to negotiate, to reason, but the Kashar didn't come to talk. They came to enslave. They burned libraries, captured scientists, and destroyed anything that showed beauty or peace. Their leader, a cold and cruel being named Vokar, sent one message to the survivors: serve or die. So the Virelians sent the only thing they had left, their SOS signal. They sent it through every frequency, every known channel, hoping someone, anyone, would hear. Days turned into weeks. The few remaining Virelians watched their skies and waited. No one answered. Every race in that part of the galaxy knew the power of the Kashar. To answer that call would mean declaring war against monsters who could wipe out planets. The universe stayed silent. Then something strange happened. Far away, in a forgotten part of the galaxy, the signal reached a planet that most aliens didn't even believe existed. A planet the galactic charts called a death world. Its name was Earth. The few who had heard of Earth spoke of it as a cursed place, a world where everything tried to kill you. The oceans were violent, the storms deadly, the creatures fierce, and even its people were said to be half mad for surviving there. The common saying among alien explorers was simple: never go near a death world. Nothing there wants to live quietly. Because of that, many believed humans were only legends, ghosts of an ancient species that had destroyed themselves long ago. But humans were not gone. They were watching. And when they heard the faint SOS from Virelia, something inside them stirred. On Earth, in a quiet command center hidden beneath the mountains, a small group of people listened to the strange coded message. It was old-style communication filled with fear and hope. At first, they thought it was just another lost signal, maybe from a deep space probe. But when they decoded the words and saw the images, the burning cities, the screams, the call for help, everything changed. For a long time, humanity had stayed silent. They had watched other civilizations rise and fall. They had kept to themselves, recovering from their own wars and mistakes. But they remembered what it felt like to be desperate, to cry for help and receive none. That memory was enough. In the United Human Confederation Hall, the leaders argued. Some said they should not interfere. This is not our war, they said. We are still rebuilding. The galaxy is not ready for us, but others, especially those who had once been soldiers, said, if we turn our backs now, we become like those who once turned theirs on us. The debate lasted 3 days and 3 nights, and then the decision was made. The humans would answer the call. The first fleet chosen for the mission was the Retribution Task Force. Its flagship, the UNS Retribution, was a massive warship made of dark titanium alloy, built to survive battles in hostile environments. It was led by Commander Ilara Haynes, a woman known for her calm strength and unbreakable will. When she received the mission order, she didn't hesitate. She simply said, set a course for the source of the signal. And just like that, the Deathworlders began to move. As the human ships prepared for launch, something incredible happened. Across Earth's colonies, volunteers poured in. Engineers, doctors, soldiers, pilots, people from every background came forward. Many knew they might not return, but that didn't matter. For them, it wasn't just about Virelia. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity still had a soul, that even on a death world, compassion could grow as strong as courage. Families stood at spaceports watching as the great engines roared to life. Children held up signs that said, bring them home. The skies over Earth shimmered with thousands of departing ships, glowing like fireflies against the stars. It took weeks for the fleet to cross the void. Along the way, they picked up fragments of transmissions, screams, explosions, silence. Each one hardened their resolve. In the quiet of the bridge, Commander Haynes often looked at the small hologram of Virelia's surface, a once living world now covered in smoke, and whispered to herself, "Hold on. We're coming." Meanwhile, on Virelia, hope was fading fast. The Kashar had taken control of most of the planet. Their soldiers hunted down survivors hiding in the forests. The last group of resistance fighters had almost no weapons left. They gathered in an underground shelter, surrounded by children and wounded elders. Their leader, a young Virelian named Arith, sat near the transmitter staring at the empty screen. "No one is coming," he said softly. "No one dares." But just as he said that, the scanner flickered. Something huge was entering their atmosphere. Above the planet, space rippled with light. The Kashar fleet, orbiting lazily, suddenly detected incoming objects. Thousands of them. At first they thought it was debris, maybe asteroids. Then the objects began to move in formation, fast, precise, disciplined. And then they saw it, the symbol on the ships. A circle with a blue and white planet at its center. Earth. Inside the Retribution, the crew sat ready. The silence was heavy until Commander Haynes stood up and spoke. "We've all heard the stories about us," she said. "They call us Deathworlders. They think we are beasts. Today we show them what that really means." Then she looked at her officers and said quietly, "Launch all units." When the first human warships dropped out of warp near Virelia, the sky exploded with light. Kashar vessels tried to respond, but their systems couldn't keep up. Human ships moved faster than anything they had ever seen, weaving through fire like living shadows. The first blast from the Retribution tore through a Kishar cruiser, splitting it in half. The Virelians hiding underground felt the ground tremble and thought it was another attack, until they saw the sky. Instead of red, it was filled with streaks of blue and white, and the voices over the comms spoke not in threats but in calm, human tones. "This is the United Human Confederation. Hold your positions. You are not alone." In that moment, something incredible happened on Virelia. Hope returned. Children looked up at the streaks of fire and called them angels. Elders cried and fell to their knees. Arith grabbed the transmitter and screamed into it. "We hear you! We hear you," the human voice replied. "Then stay alive. Help has arrived." The first day of the war for Virelia began not with surrender but with defiance. Humanity, born from a world of chaos, had finally stepped into the galaxy's light, and as the alien empires watched from afar, they whispered among themselves. They had heard the stories about the Deathworlders, but none of them had ever imagined they would be the ones to come when no one else did. The message spread faster than the battle itself. Across the stars, species that had long lived in fear began to ask the same question. Who are these humans? No one could answer yet. But one thing was certain. The moment the Deathworlders answered that alien SOS, the galaxy would never be the same again. When the first human ships arrived in the orbit of Virelia, the sky turned into something the galaxy had never seen before. The Kashar soldiers, who had been laughing and celebrating their victory, suddenly froze. Massive shadows appeared above the clouds, black metal beasts that covered the stars. The largest among them, the UNS Retribution, moved like a living mountain. Its surface was scarred and heavy with weapons, but its engines burned bright blue, cutting through the darkness. The alien scanners tried to read its design, but the systems couldn't even understand what they were seeing. It was too dense, too powerful, too human. Commander Alara Haynes stood at the center of the bridge, staring at the blue planet below. Her face was calm, but her eyes were full of fire. Around her, officers moved quickly, running scans, locking weapons, preparing for battle. "The planet's burning," one officer said quietly. "Half of the surface is lost." Haynes didn't blink. "Then we save the half that's left," she replied. On the ground, the Virelians looked up in confusion. The sky was full of strange shapes, huge ships they had never seen before. Some thought it was another Kashar attack. But then a deep, clear voice came through the comms, translated into their language. "This is Commander Haynes of the United Human Confederation. Stay underground. We are here to help." The word spread through the survivors like a spark through dry grass. The Virelians had cried for help, and now someone had answered. The Kashar ships quickly formed their battle lines, confident as always. They had crushed hundreds of worlds before, and they thought these new arrivals would fall the same way. Their commander sneered, calling the humans fools from a forgotten world. But within minutes, that arrogance turned to panic. The first human attack was silent, no flashy warnings, no speeches, no threats. Just motion. The Retribution opened fire with rail cannons and the rounds tore through the void faster than sound. One Kashar cruiser exploded instantly, its hull melting in space. Another tried to return fire, but human ships moved unpredictably, rolling and diving as if they were alive. The aliens had never seen a fleet fight like this. They were used to cold, calculated maneuvers. But the humans fought like predators, fast, clever, and angry. Down below, the Varelians could see streaks of light cutting through the sky. The ground shook with each impact. Some children screamed, but the elders whispered that these were not the destroyers, they were the saviors. For the first time in months, they dared to believe that the Kashar could be beaten. Human landing crafts broke through the atmosphere, glowing like falling stars. The heat shields turned bright orange as they descended. Kashar forces on the ground opened fire, filling the skies with plasma bolts. But the human dropships didn't slow down. They went straight through the storm, their armor absorbing the hits. When they landed, the hatches opened and armored soldiers stepped out. Their armor was thick, black, and built to survive anything. Their visors glowed with blue light. The first human to step onto Varelia was Captain Drew Larkin. He raised his rifle, scanned the horizon, and said into his comm, "Ground team secured. Time to clean house." The Kashar soldiers charged, screaming war cries. They expected the humans to retreat. Instead, the humans advanced. They moved in small groups, covering each other, firing with precision. The air filled with the sound of gunfire and explosions. Human grenades tore through Kashar ranks. The aliens had never faced enemies who could fight up close, eye to eye, with no fear of death. One Kashar officer watched in disbelief as a human soldier, even after being hit, dragged a wounded Varelian child out of the fire and handed her to safety before returning to fight. The aliens couldn't understand it. They were trained to value strength above all, yet here were these Deathworlders risking everything to protect someone weaker than themselves. Commander Haynes continued to direct the battle from orbit. "Target enemy reinforcements," she ordered. "Do not hit civilian zones." Her crew worked tirelessly, guiding their weapons with surgical precision. Even in the middle of war, humans refused to fight like monsters. That made them even more dangerous. As the battle went on, the Varelians slowly came out from their shelters. They saw humans running into fire, shouting orders, pulling wounded allies and even enemies to safety. They didn't just fight, they protected. The aliens had seen warriors before, but never like this. Humanity didn't just bring war, they brought heart. At one point, a Kashar commander tried to broadcast a surrender trap, pretending to give up. Commander Haynes saw through it instantly. "They're stalling," she said. "Send in the 2nd Division." The next moment, a squad of human pilots dove straight into the enemy command ship, destroying it before the Kashar could react. Every move was bold, every risk calculated. Humanity was teaching the galaxy that mercy and power could exist in the same breath. Hours turned into days. The human forces kept pushing forward city by city, freeing survivors, establishing safe zones. The Varelians began to help, guiding humans through their destroyed cities, showing hidden tunnels, providing maps. It became more than a rescue. It became an alliance born in fire. One night, under a ruined bridge, Captain Larkin sat beside Aerith, the Varelian resistance leader. Aerith stared at the humans' weapons, still amazed. "You came all this way for us," he said. "Why?" Larkin took off his helmet and smiled tiredly. "Because once we were alone too," he said. "And no one came for us. We won't let that happen to anyone else." Aerith didn't reply. He just looked up at the stars where human ships moved like silent guardians and whispered, "Then maybe your people are not Deathworlders. Maybe you're something greater." Above them, the Retribution stayed in orbit guarding the planet. Commander Haynes received reports from across the front. The Kashar forces were retreating. The first victory had been won, but she didn't celebrate. She knew it was only the beginning. "They'll come back stronger," she said quietly. "This isn't just one planet's war anymore." Her second officer looked at her and asked, "Should we call for more ships?" Haynes shook her head. "No," she said. "We don't need more ships. We need allies who still believe in something worth fighting for." And she was right. The news of what happened on Varelia began to spread through the stars. Across the galaxy, species that had once stayed silent began whispering. The Deathworlders had returned, and they weren't monsters. They were protectors. But their way of protecting came with fire, and every empire knew that the balance of power was about to change. In the ruins of Virelia's capital, humans and Virelians stood side by side. Together they raised a new flag, a symbol of unity between two worlds that had once been strangers. Around them, the night sky still glowed from the battles above, but for the first time, that light felt like hope. Children of both species ran through the rubble laughing, unaware that they were witnessing the beginning of something much larger than themselves. Far above, Commander Haynes watched the planet from her ship's window. The clouds still burned, but there were patches of blue again. She thought about the cost, the soldiers they had lost, the distance from home, but she also thought about what they had gained. "We came to answer a call," she said softly, "and now the whole galaxy is listening." On distant worlds, alien leaders began to panic. They had built their power on fear and silence, but now someone had broken that silence. The humans had shown that courage could be louder than terror. The Kashar were furious, swearing vengeance, but even they could feel something shifting. For the Virelians, the humans were not just saviors. They were a reminder that legends can be real. The word Deathworlder began to take on a new meaning. It no longer meant a destroyer. It meant someone who fought for life even when surrounded by death. As the Retribution fleet prepared to move deeper into space, Commander Haynes looked at the star map ahead. "This isn't over," she said. "The signal that brought us here was just the beginning. The galaxy is in pain, and we've got a lot of work to do." The crew nodded. No one needed to say it, but they all felt it. Their mission had changed everything. The Deathworlders had arrived, and nothing in the universe would ever be the same again. The news of the battle on Virelia spread like wildfire across the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Kashar Dominion had been defeated, even if only on one planet. The impossible had happened. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they had won. Across the stars, people whispered the name human with fear, respect, and curiosity. No one had ever fought the Kashar and lived to tell the story. Yet these strange beings from the dark world called Earth had done it. In the heart of the Dominion, the Kashar Council gathered in fury. Their fleets had ruled half the galaxy, and they could not believe that a single species had dared to resist. Their leader, Vokar the Conqueror, smashed his clawed hand against the table. "They are savages," he hissed. "They know nothing of power. They are insects who will burn." But even as he spoke, he saw the fear in his general's eyes. The humans had done something no one else dared. They had turned defense into war. On Earth and its colonies, humanity prepared for the battles to come. The victory on Virelia was not an end. It was the beginning of something much greater. Commander Alara Haynes had returned to orbit repairing her ships, but her mind was already far ahead. She knew the Kashar would never forgive what happened. They would come in numbers the galaxy had never seen. And when they came, humanity would be ready. In a meeting of the United Human Confederation, admirals, scientists, and diplomats gathered to discuss their next move. Some wanted to pull back to protect Earth. Others wanted to strike first. "They'll come for us no matter what," Commander Haynes said firmly. "If we wait, they'll bring the war to our home. If we move now, we fight on our terms." Her voice carried the room. The decision was made. The Deathworlders would take the war to the Dominion itself. The humans began building. Massive shipyards came alive on the moons of Mars and Titan. Fleets of warships rolled out, each one tougher and faster than the last. Soldiers trained in artificial gravity fields, preparing for every kind of battlefield: space, desert, jungle, and ice. Engineers studied the wreckage of Kashar ships captured at Virelia, learning how to turn their enemies' technology against them. In months, the humans had grown stronger. They were not just survivors anymore. They were becoming something the galaxy had never seen: a united species with a mission. Meanwhile, on other worlds, small alien races began to take notice. The Virelians sent messages of thanks and offers of alliance. The Lumeri, a peaceful people who had been paying tribute to the Kashar for generations, secretly sent supplies to the humans. The Drax, a warrior species who once fought the Dominion and lost, sent a single transmission: "If you're really fighting them, we'll join you." Humanity's fire was spreading. One by one, the oppressed worlds began to rise. The first counterattack came sooner than expected. A massive Kashar fleet entered the Naira system, hoping to crush the growing rebellion. 50 of their warships surrounded a human outpost. They expected the humans to surrender or flee. Instead, the Retribution Task Force appeared out of hyperspace like a storm. The battle that followed lasted only 12 minutes. Human ships didn't fight the way others did. They adapted instantly. When one formation failed, they changed it mid-battle. When their weapons overheated, they switched to ramming tactics. Every human ship fought like it had a mind of its own. Commander Haynes's ship, the Retribution, faced 3 enemy cruisers alone. The hull shook, alarms blared, but her voice never wavered. "Keep firing," she ordered. "We didn't come this far to stop now." Her crew obeyed without question. When the smoke cleared, the enemy fleet was gone. The Nera system was free. The message went out across the stars. The Kashar could bleed, but the victories came at a price. Thousands of human soldiers were lost in each battle. Families on Earth watched the war reports with pride and sorrow, streets filled with posters of heroes who never returned. And still more volunteers came forward, ready to fight for those they had never met. Humanity had found something it had been missing for generations, a purpose beyond itself. On one distant colony, a young Virelian child asked her mother, "Why do they fight for us?" The mother smiled sadly and said, "Because they remember what it feels like to be alone." Those words echoed through the galaxy. Humans didn't fight for conquest or wealth. They fought because they refused to let others suffer as they once had. The Kashar began to change their tactics. They no longer underestimated the humans. They started building stronger ships, faster weapons, and more cunning traps. In one brutal engagement near the Helios Rift, an entire human fleet vanished. Not a single ship returned. The galaxy mourned, and many feared that the Deathworlders had finally met their match. But then, 3 weeks later, the Kashar's main supply base exploded without warning. A single human stealth ship had slipped through their defenses and detonated their fuel reserves. Humanity had struck back harder than anyone imagined. Commander Haynes became a name known even to children on alien worlds. The Kashar called her the Iron Star, because wherever her fleet appeared, destruction followed. But to those she saved, she was a symbol of hope. Every time she appeared on their skies, people whispered, "We are safe now." Still, the war took its toll. Haynes spent countless nights staring at the stars, remembering the faces of those she lost. Her closest friend, Captain Larkin, was killed in the Battle of Sarath Prime, sacrificing his ship to protect a refugee convoy. When she heard the news, she didn't cry. She simply said, "He did what we all came here to do." But her heart grew heavier with each passing day. Months turned into years, and the war spread to every corner of the galaxy. Whole constellations became battlefields. The humans kept fighting, learning, adapting. The Kashar could not understand them. They had fought many enemies before, some stronger, some smarter, but none like the Deathworlders. The humans fought even when outnumbered, even when surrounded, even when hope was gone. The Kashar learned a terrifying truth. Humans didn't fear death. They respected it. During one of the bloodiest battles, an alien ally, the Lumerian ambassador, asked a human soldier why they kept fighting when they could just leave and protect their own world. The soldier laughed softly and said, "Because we can't sleep knowing someone else is screaming for help." Those words spread among the Allied fleets, and soon they became the unofficial motto of the human campaign. Even alien races who had once despised humans began to understand them. The Deathworlders were not monsters. They were protectors born from a planet that had tried to kill them every day. They had learned to survive not by being cruel, but by being stronger, smarter, and more united. But every victory came with heavier losses. The Kashar unleashed new weapons, plasma storms that melted ships, virus bombs that poisoned atmospheres, and shadow drones that hunted survivors in silence. Still, the humans fought back. Every time they were pushed down, they rose again. On Virelia, now partly rebuilt, the people watched the skies for the flicker of human ships. They sent messages of gratitude, songs, and art inspired by their saviors. Some even joined the human forces as translators and medics. They wanted to be part of the fire that had saved them. Then came the message that changed everything. A scout ship discovered something deep in Dominion space. The Kashar were building a massive weapon, a device capable of burning entire solar systems. They called it the Oblivion Forge. Its completion would mean the end of every free world. The human commanders stared at the transmission in silence. They knew what it meant. The war was reaching its final stage. Commander Haynes stood before her fleet, now larger than ever but scarred from years of battle. "We've come too far to turn back now," she said. "We started this because someone called for help. We'll finish it because no one else can." Her voice carried through every ship, through every soldier's heart. They knew the fight ahead would be the hardest one yet, but none of them hesitated. In the following days, the Allied forces began to gather, the Varelians, the Lemurians, the Dracs, and dozens more. For the first time in history, so many different species stood together for one cause, and at the center of it all stood humanity, battered but unbroken. The galaxy had changed. The Deathworlders had become something far greater than anyone imagined. They had turned from myth to legend, from fear to faith, and as their fleets prepared to face the greatest weapon ever built, one truth burned brighter than the stars themselves. When humans fought, they didn't just fight to win. They fought to make sure no one would ever have to send another unanswered SOS again. The war had reached its darkest moment. For years, humans and their allies had fought bravely across countless worlds, but the Kashar Dominion refused to fall. Every victory cost thousands of lives. Every new planet freed left another burning behind it. And now news spread like a shadow through the stars. The Kashar had built something new, something beyond imagination. They called it the Oblivion Forge. It was not a simple weapon. It was a monster made of metal and fire, built to destroy entire star systems. The galaxy had seen many horrors, but nothing like this. The forge could pull energy from a sun and turn it into a weapon of pure destruction. Once activated, it would burn everything within light years. No fleet could survive it. No planet could hide from it. When the humans first saw the images of the forge, there was silence across their command centers. The great structure floated above a dying star, surrounded by hundreds of Kashar warships. Its core glowed with the light of captured suns, and its purpose was clear. The Dominion planned to use it to end the war in one single blow. Commander Alara Haynes stood in the command room of the UNS Retribution, her face lit by the red glow of the hologram showing the forge's structure. "If that thing fires," she said quietly, "there won't be anyone left to save." The officers around her looked at each other. They knew what she meant. This was not a battle they could fight from a distance. The forge had to be destroyed no matter the cost. Admiral Reeve, her superior officer, appeared on the comm screen. "You know what this means, Commander," he said. "That station is protected by an entire armada. Getting close enough to strike it will be suicide." Ilara looked straight at him. "Then it's a good thing suicide is something humans are very good at avoiding." The Admiral gave a tired smile. He had seen that same fire before, the kind that only humans from Earth seemed to carry, the kind that didn't stop burning even when all hope was gone. "You'll lead the mission," he said finally. "Retribution and her fleet will move in first. We'll follow when we can." Preparations began immediately. Engineers worked day and night to arm the Retribution with everything they had left: heavy torpedoes, plasma cannons, railguns, and a single experimental reactor capable of creating a blast strong enough to destroy the forge from the inside. It was humanity's last weapon, but it was unstable. If it detonated inside the ship, it would kill everyone on board. Commander Haynes knew this, but she said nothing. She had already made her choice. The night before the final mission, she stood in her quarters, looking at a small photograph on her desk. Her crew from the first day they launched from Earth. So many faces were gone now. She touched the picture gently and whispered, "We'll finish what we started." Outside, the stars shone quietly, unaware that by this time tomorrow, one of them might be gone. The next day, the human fleet gathered at the edge of the Oblivion system. Thousands of ships stood ready, engines humming in the silence of space. On every ship, soldiers sat waiting for the order, checking their weapons, sending last messages to their families. The mood was heavy, but there was no fear. They had fought too long for that. On the Retribution's bridge, Commander Haynes spoke through the fleet channel. "We all know what's waiting for us on the other side. Some of us won't make it back, but if we fail, the galaxy dies, and if we succeed, even for a moment, we'll have done something that will be remembered forever. Humanity answers when the universe cries for help. Let's go remind them why." The order was given. The fleet jumped into hyperspace. When they emerged, the sky was filled with enemy ships. The forge loomed in the distance like a burning god. The Kashar fleet opened fire instantly. The space between stars lit up with explosions. Thousands of bright lights flashed and vanished as ships were destroyed. The humans returned fire, their cannons roaring through the void. The Allied forces joined them, Varelian and Drax ships forming walls of light to shield the human advance. But the Kashar numbers were endless. The forge began to charge. Its core pulsed brighter and brighter, glowing like a newborn sun. Commander Haynes watched the readings. "They're powering it up," her second officer shouted. "If it fires, it'll take the whole system." Ilara clenched her jaw. "Then we get there first," she said. "All power to engines." The Retribution surged forward, pushing through enemy fire. Plasma bolts struck its hull, tearing through armor, but the ship didn't stop. One by one, her escort ships fell behind, destroyed or disabled until only a handful remained. The crew worked with grim determination, patching systems, rerouting power, doing everything they could to keep the ship alive. Inside the forge, the Kashar commanders watched in disbelief. "They're coming straight at us," one shouted. "They'll never make it." But even as he spoke, the Retribution kept moving, cutting through the Dominion lines. Human fighter pilots flew ahead, sacrificing themselves to clear a path. The forge's massive defense cannons turned to fire on the approaching ship, but each blast that struck the Retribution was met with another push forward. Every hit only made them faster. Finally, the ship broke through the last line of defense. The forge was so close now that it filled the entire viewport. The energy inside it looked like a living storm, spinning faster and faster. "We're in range," the weapons officer shouted. "But we can't destroy it from here, it's too strong." Haynes looked at the glowing reactor core display beside her. There was only one option left. She turned to her crew. "Prepare to overload the main reactor. We'll take it out from the inside." The crew stared at her, realizing what she meant. One by one, they nodded. Not a single person refused. They knew their mission. The Retribution's engines flared to full power. The ship dove straight toward the heart of the forge. The enemy cannons tore into its hull, but it didn't slow down. Fire spread through the corridors. Explosions ripped through the decks. Alarms screamed. Commander Haynes grabbed the comm microphone and sent her final message to the fleet and every Allied ship listening across the stars. Her voice was steady and calm. "To anyone who can hear me, this is Commander Ilara Haynes of the United Human Confederation. You called for help. Humanity answers." The last thing the crew saw was the core of the forge ahead of them, glowing brighter than a sun. Then everything went white. The Retribution's reactor detonated, releasing an energy wave so powerful that it consumed both the ship and the forge. The explosion spread like a sunrise, washing over the Kashar fleet. Their ships disintegrated in seconds. The blast echoed through the system, visible from planets light years away. For a moment, the entire galaxy stopped to watch. In that silent moment after the explosion, there was nothing. No sound, no movement. Just a glowing cloud where the forge had been. The Allied fleets, scattered and broken, stared at their sensors. Slowly, the readings came in. The forge was gone, completely destroyed. And so was the Retribution. There were no survivors. When the news reached Earth, the world fell silent. Bells rang in every city. Across the galaxy, in hundreds of worlds that had once been enslaved by the Dominion, people stood under their skies and watched the light of the explosion as it reached their worlds. Some cried, others knelt, and some simply whispered thank you. The Deathworlders had done what no one else could. The Kashar Dominion collapsed in chaos. Their fleets were scattered, their command broken. Without the forge, they had lost their greatest weapon. Rebellion spread through their territories like wildfire. Planets rose up, throwing off their chains. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was free. But that freedom came at a terrible cost. On the ruins of Virelia, the people built a monument. It showed a human soldier standing tall, one hand holding a child, the other pointing toward the stars. Beneath it were carved the final words of Commander Haynes. "You called for help. Humanity answers." For weeks, Allied ships searched the remains of the forge, hoping to find survivors. They found nothing but fragments of metal and ashes. Yet some pilots claimed they saw something strange, a flicker of light deep inside the nebula where the forge had been. Some said it was only debris. Others whispered that it was the spirit of the Retribution, still watching over the galaxy it had saved. Across the stars, humans were no longer seen as the terrifying creatures from a death world. They were seen as the guardians of the helpless, the warriors of light. But for those who had fought beside them, the truth was deeper. They had seen the humans fire up close, the way they fought, the way they cared, the way they refused to give up. They were not just soldiers. They were a promise made real. In every new dawn, when children on Varelia or Drax looked up at the sky, they would see the faint glow of the destroyed forge and remember the story of the humans who answered an SOS and burned a galaxy to save it. And though the retribution was gone, its legacy burned brighter than any sun. Humanity had shown the universe the meaning of courage, sacrifice, and hope. They had proved that even in the darkest corner of space, when death seemed certain, the light of those who dare to fight for others could never truly fade. Years passed after the great explosion that destroyed the Oblivion Forge. The galaxy had changed forever. The Kishar Dominion, once feared by every living being, was broken. Its warlords turned against each other, and its empire fell apart into scattered ashes. Planets that had suffered for centuries under their rule were finally free. The people of Varelia, Drax, and dozens of other worlds began to rebuild their homes. But even as peace slowly returned, the memory of the humans, the Deathworlders, remained, alive in every heart and every story told across the stars. The explosion that destroyed the forge had been so powerful that its light could still be seen years later as a faint golden cloud hanging in the night sky. Many people called it the Guardian's Flame. Children born after the war were told that the light was the spirit of the human ship, Retribution, and its brave crew who had given everything to save the galaxy. Pilgrims traveled from far planets to see that light with their own eyes. They would stand quietly looking up at it, whispering prayers or thanks. For them, it was not just a memory. It was proof that even in a universe full of darkness, there was still hope. On Earth, life was different too. The war had taken so much. Whole cities were filled with monuments, each one carrying the names of those who never returned. Commander Ilara Haynes's name was written in gold on the biggest one, the Pillar of Sacrifice. Every year on the same day the forge was destroyed, people gathered there with candles and flowers. Families of the fallen came. Old soldiers stood in silence, and children placed small stars made of paper around the monument. It was a quiet celebration of courage, but also a reminder of the price humanity had paid. The United Human Confederation, which had once been divided by politics and distance, was now more united than ever. The galaxy had seen what humans could do when they stood together. They were no longer just another species trying to survive. They had become the defenders of the galaxy, the ones who answered when no one else could. Because of that, other civilizations began to trust them in ways they never had before. Treaties were signed, trade routes opened, and joint colonies were built on neutral planets where humans lived side by side with aliens who once feared them. One such world was called Haven's Reach, a planet once ruined by war but reborn as a place of peace. It became the center of the Galactic Council, a group formed to make sure that such a war would never happen again. And at the heart of its capital city stood a towering statue of a human figure, holding a burning star in her hand. It was made in honor of Commander Haynes and the crew of the Retribution. The statue faced the sky, her eyes carved to look upward, as if watching over everyone. Beneath it, a single line was written. For every cry of help, there will always be an answer. But not everyone could move on so easily. Captain Dalen Virex, a Drax officer who had fought beside the humans, still carried the memories of the final battle. He had been there when the forge exploded. His ship had barely survived the shockwave. For years, he had searched the debris fields looking for anything. A piece of the Retribution, a message, a sign that someone had survived. Every time he found nothing, his heart grew heavier. But deep down, he refused to believe that the humans were truly gone. One quiet evening, Dalen stood on the bridge of his ship, the Star Hunter, looking at the golden nebula where the forge once stood. His crew was silent, watching too. Suddenly, the sensors began to beep. The readings were faint, barely noticeable. A signal, weak and old, buried under layers of radiation. Dalen's heart skipped a beat. "Trace it," he ordered. The signal was simple, repeating again and again in human code. It said only 2 words. Still here. No one could explain how it was possible. Maybe it was an old automated message from before the explosion, trapped in the energy field of the forge. Or maybe somehow something of the Retribution had survived. Dalen smiled faintly as he watched the words flicker on the screen. "Still here," he repeated softly. "Of course you are." When the news spread, it reignited something in people across the galaxy. It didn't matter if the message was real or not. What mattered was what it meant. It reminded everyone that the spirit of humanity, their courage, their refusal to give up, was still alive. The galaxy began calling it the message of the lost. It became a symbol of strength. Schools taught children about it, and in songs and poems those words were repeated like a prayer. Years later, a new generation of explorers was born. Many of them were inspired by the human story. They joined the galactic fleet not for war, but to protect others. Among them was a young girl named Rhea Alara Haynes, the granddaughter of Commander Haynes's brother. She grew up listening to the stories of her great-aunt, the woman who had flown into a sun to save the galaxy. Rhea wanted to follow in her footsteps. She joined the fleet as a pilot, wearing a small silver pendant shaped like the symbol of the Retribution. It was her lucky charm. On her first mission, Rhea's ship was sent to explore the remains of a long-forgotten region near the edge of known space, a region filled with debris from the old war. As they approached, their scanners picked up strange readings, faint energy signatures that didn't match anything on record. When Rhea looked out from the cockpit, she saw pieces of broken metal floating among the stars. Some of them bore old human markings. She reached out, touching the glass as if she could feel the memories hidden there. Then her ship's computer beeped. A signal appeared, weak, old, and barely there. Her co-pilot frowned. "Looks like background radiation." But Rhea shook her head. The signal was familiar. She knew that code. She opened the transmission, and once again the same two words appeared. "Still here?" Her heart raced. It couldn't be real, and yet it was. The same message that had been found decades ago was still repeating, carried endlessly through the void. When Rhea returned to Haven's Reach, she told the council about the signal. Many scientists studied it, trying to find its source. Some believed it came from a fragment of the Retribution's AI core still active somewhere deep in the nebula. Others thought it was only an echo of the past. But Rhea didn't care about explanations. For her, it was a message from her ancestor, a sign that bravery never truly dies. As time went on, the galaxy continued to rebuild. Peace spread slowly, planet by planet, but everyone knew that peace was fragile, and danger could return someday. That was why the Council created the Retribution Fleet, a new defense force made of humans and allies, trained not to conquer but to protect. Their symbol was the same as the one carved on the old ship's hull, a star burning in an open hand. And at every oath-taking ceremony, new recruits repeated the same words before they began their service. "We are still here." Centuries later, long after the last survivors of the war had turned to dust, the legend of the Deathworlders was still told. Around campfires on distant colonies, travelers would tell the story of the humans who answered an alien SOS and changed the galaxy forever. They spoke of how they came from a planet where even life itself fought to survive, how their hearts burned like their world, and how their courage lit the darkness of the stars. Some storytellers said that in the deepest parts of space, when you listen carefully, you can still hear the echo of the Retribution's engines, a faint hum carried by the starlight. Others claimed to have seen a ghostly light moving among the remains of the forge, like a ship made of flame and memory, still traveling through the void. And maybe it was true. Maybe the crew of the Retribution never really died. Maybe they became something greater, guardians watching silently over the galaxy they saved. Whether true or not, their story had become immortal. It was no longer just a war story. It was a reminder of what it meant to be human, to fight for others, to hope when there's no reason to, and to believe that even in death, courage can live forever. As the stars shone quietly in the endless dark, the golden nebula of the forge flickered faintly like a heartbeat. It pulsed once softly, and for anyone watching from a distant planet it looked almost alive. And if you listened closely, beneath the whispers of the cosmos, you could almost hear the faint voice of Commander Haynes, steady, calm, unyielding, repeating her final words across eternity. "You called for help. Humanity answers."